So how did they end up waking Takata up from his coma after this fight with the divine nation of Lena? After Takata being in a coma for a couple weeks, Adiu finally says we're going to summon Vitro. Vitro is the only person that has the brains and intelligence enough to figure out what's going on. During this time, Takata will end up waking up occasionally and only stare out the window. But in Mynoghra, Vitro is also causing a ruckus. He's pretty much getting involved in everything, pissing everybody off, because that's the nature of his character. He's supposed to be someone who causes chaos, someone who does whatever he wants, and goes about it however he wants. Vitro eventually ends up leaving Mynoghra, claiming that everyone within the capital is bullying him, and that he needs to go and find himself. Atsu, Elder Moltar, and pretty much everybody else is like, oh my god, he's abandoning the king right now. And then he leaves a little letter basically saying, I'm not abandoning the king, I just need some time to myself. So he goes over to Annalise and Dragonton, and it pretty much explains he's a Mynoghran hero, and that everything from here, he's going to be staying there. So he starts pretty much going out and creating a new religion called the Cult of Ira. During this time, he pretty much gains followers fast as fuck. With these followers, he's able to pretty much gain fanaticism. Fanaticism allows him to go on to other towns and pretty much increase the cult as fast and as smooth as possible. During this time, Takata ends up waking up and figuring out that Vitro is alive. But that's not what woke Takata up before y'all start questioning. So now learning that Takata is awake, Vitro ends up making an audience with Takata. He pretty much lays out this plan of bringing the cult worldwide so that Takata can use it to conquer the world. Takata's like, I don't know about that. And then Vitro's like, well, with this cult, it can help me follow my dream. And Takata's like, what's your dream, bud? And this is when Vitro says, I want to be your concubine. I want to be the bunny girl with the big bugzungas that sits upon your side and pretty much lets you do everything. You will be able to use my body as you see fit because I love you that much, King Takata. That is not an exaggeration. Pretty much, they go back and forth in a debate style and try to get the upper hand on the other. Takata finally starts laughing and says, what do you need to pretty much help your plan to bring the cult worldwide go into fruition? He said, the only thing I need from you, King Takata, are the two twins, Korea and Maria. And then Takata said, done. So Vitro ends up taking Korea and Maria all the way down to the plague-filled citizens of the divine nation of Lena, and all those people who have Adel. He ends up using Korea and Maria's abilities to pretty much fake miracles of God. With that, Korea is able to cancel out her plague, pretty much healing everybody within the world that is in that room, and Maria is able to make them forget about Arlos, that little bitch. So after curing everybody within the off-town called Seldarach, he ends up going into the main capital where all the people are. This is paladins, this is saints, this is inquisitors, all these people are there. Instead of pretty much trying to hide his presence, he goes and faces them head on because he's read all of the nation's secrets. So he knows what he can and can't do. So he pretty much first meets up with Inquisitor Kra. Inquisitor Kra is not very much fond of him and wants to cut him down. But because he surrenders right then and there, she cannot do that. Because she cannot do that, she has to pretty much figure out what Vitro wants. And during that time, she pretty much handcuffs him, takes him all the way to the Paladin headquarters with Yana, one of the people in the cult, and pretty much locks him up there. From there, they say, when we get the orders from headquarters in Central Quela, you will be executed. It doesn't matter if I can't strike you down. The rules of God says if they say it's okay, you still die. But Vitro's not done yet. He says, well, that would be a shame because I can place a challenge right here, right now. And if you are willing to accept this challenge, I think that we could have a friendly competition. And the friendly competition is to see who can gain more followers throughout the city. Inquisitor Kra ends up knowing that the last time that the divine nation of Lena was attacked was because they ended up cutting down a Mynoghran citizen. And she doesn't feel like having that same tragedy fall upon her if Vitro was to end up being cut down. Little does she know, Takata does not give a fuck about him. So she accepts the challenge and pretty much sends him on his way. From that point, the Cult of Ira is now able to operate within Amorida. Amorida ends up gaining a shit ton of cult members then. And all the people who were plagued with illness starts going over here. That's when the Scribe Saint and Kra ends up having to have a conversation. That conversation pretty much goes like this. I'm going to use my abilities to help save these people. Kra's like, you shouldn't do that. She's like, I don't fucking care. I'm going to do it anyways. And that's when the Saint and Kra ends up having to figure out what to do next because they're losing followers by the millions. And the Saint Script's like, you know what? I'll use my powers to make a miracle. And Kra's like, no, don't fucking do that. She's like, kind of don't care. We'll do it anyways. So Kra goes up into her room, destroys the room, smashing everything, smashing the walls, angry as fuck. And at one point, Vitro came to both the Saint Script and Kra and offered her a solution to the problem. They could join the Cult of Ira. If they ended up joining the Cult of Ira, there would be nothing bad that's ever going to happen to them. They're going to live within evil. And she's like, well, you know what they say about the deals with the devil? And Vitro's like, because it's always true. When you deal with the devil, you get what you want. When you deal with God, you make a wish for what you want. So Kra ends up finally accepting that because she doesn't want the Script Saint to end up offering up her life. So she goes over there and is like, you know what? I accept. And Vitro's like, say it. Say you forsake your God and that you are now one of us. And she ends up shaking his hand and says, I forsake my God. I willingly join the Cult of Ira. Now, of course, the Saint Script ended up going into her room and seeing it destroyed. That's when she realized how much Inquisitor Kra ended up actually giving a fuck about her. So she was like, oh shit. So she followed her all the way down to the Cult of Ira church that was set up at the end of town and goes, oh, you just forsake our God. I have to save you now because you just joined the forces of evil. I have to save you. So I'm going to use my powers of giving up my memory to save you. And with this, she ends up giving up all her memories, including the memories of her beloved father, to pretty much save Inquisitor Kra. But she doesn't remember who Inquisitor Kra is after that and pretty much goes on a berserking rampage. Of course, Maria and Korea pretty much try to stop her from doing all of this, and then that's when everything just pretty much goes to shit. Vitro steps in front of them and pretty much says, hey, y'all get out of here. Take Yana and Inquisitor Kra with you. We're going to pretty much stop this person. So Vitro ends up going one-on-one with the Saint and gets his head smashed with a book. Except Vitro cannot die. Yes, you heard me right. He cannot die. So he goes all the way back to the capital after he dies and pretty much has a meeting with Takata and pretty much lays everything out. That the Cult of Ira, everything there. And that's when Takata was like, oh, you thought you had me. So he reads through everything and pretty much the entire cult would have originally rewritten his name. Because the Nameless God ended up taking over Takata's personality, and Takata forgot that he is both a player and a character, he became in a coma. So to pretty much stop Takata from being in that coma, they had to give name to the Nameless God. He used the Cult of Ira's knowledge against Vitro. Because when he ended up announcing his loyalty to Takata, Takata was not the person sitting on the throne. It was a botchling using the mimic ability. So he was then cast out of his own cult, except he doesn't really tell anybody this, and he still runs the cult as it's supposed to. But Takata said, I didn't even need you. The whole purpose of what needed to bring me back, I already had in place. By getting Achiyu to come over here and tell us stories about my former life with her, I was already going to come back from that coma. You were just a plan B if that didn't work. So how Takata ended up in a coma and how he got out was pretty much the Nameless God abilities. They had to give a name to the Nameless God and then bring back the player known as Takata Era.